My husband worked night shifts for 8 months. At least, that's what he told me. Every night at exactly 9:15, he'd kiss my forehead, grab his hospital bag, and leave our apartment like clockwork. And every morning, around 6 a.m., he'd come home exhausted, sometimes smelling like coffee, sometimes antiseptic, sometimes rain. I believed him, completely, until the night I called the hospital, and they told me, he doesn't work here. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 34 years old, middle school counselor, married for 9 years. Or at least, I was. My husband's name is Michael Bennett, 40 years old, respiratory therapist. At least, that's who I thought he was. People always say betrayal changes you. That's true, but what they don't tell you is this. The worst part isn't discovering the lie. The worst part is realizing how long you lived beside it without seeing it. And once you finally do see it, you can never look at your old life the same way again. The night shifts started in October. Michael came home unusually quiet one evening. Not upset, not angry, just distant. We were eating takeout Chinese food on the couch while some reality cooking show played in the background. Then he muted the TV and said, "They're moving me to nights." I looked up immediately. Nights? Permanently? Probably for a while, he shrugged casually. Staff shortage. I remember feeling disappointed more than worried. Night shifts change marriages. Different schedules, different sleep cycles, less time together. But hospitals are unpredictable places. I understood that. At least, I thought I did. The first few weeks were hard. Michael slept during the day while I worked. I'd leave for school quietly every morning, trying not to wake him. Sometimes I'd stand in the bedroom doorway before leaving and just watch him sleep. Messy dark hair, one arm hanging off the bed, soft snoring. Safe. Familiar. Mine. Funny how quickly certainty can rot. At night, the apartment felt wrong without him. Too quiet. I started sleeping with the television on just to create noise. Michael would leave around 9:15 every evening, always the same routine. Shower, coffee in a travel mug, dark blue scrubs, hospital ID clipped near his chest. Then he'd kiss me goodbye. See you in the morning. And every morning, around 6, he'd return, exhausted. At first, I pitied him. Night shifts were clearly draining him. He looked pale constantly, lost weight, started drinking more coffee. Sometimes he barely spoke after work. He'd just shower and collapse into bed. I remember one morning rubbing his shoulders while he sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly into space. "You okay?" "Tired." "You should ask for days." "They need me." Simple answer. Too simple. Back then, I still thought exhaustion explained everything. Then little things started changing. Small things, the kinds of details people ignore because they don't want to seem paranoid. Michael became protective of his phone. Not dramatically, subtly, turning the screen away, taking calls in other rooms, keeping it face down. One night, his phone buzzed while he showered. The screen lit up beside me on the couch. No name, just a number, and one message. "Tomorrow, same place?" My stomach tightened immediately, but then I told myself something logical. Coworker, night shift schedules, hospital people coordinate weird hours all the time. See, that's what love does. It teaches you how to lie to yourself. Around December, I started noticing something stranger. Michael no longer smelled like hospitals. I know that sounds ridiculous, but if you've ever spent time around medical workers, you know the smell. Sanitizer, soap, sterile air. Michael used to come home smelling like that for years. Now sometimes he smelled like cigarette smoke or whiskey. One morning, he came home faintly like women's perfume. Not strong, just enough to make my chest tighten. I asked casually, "Was someone wearing strong perfume at work?" He froze for half a second, then laughed. Probably patience. Patience. At 5 a.m., wearing expensive perfume. I nodded anyway, because once again, I wanted the lie more than the truth. January was when things really started breaking. Michael became emotionally distant. Physically present, emotionally somewhere else. He stopped asking about my day, stopped touching me absent-mindedly, stopped laughing at stupid little things. We became roommates, wearing wedding rings. One Friday night, I woke up around 2 a.m. thirsty. Michael had left an hour earlier for work. I walked into the kitchen, half asleep, then noticed something strange. His coffee mug was still sitting in the sink, cold, untouched. But he always drank coffee before night shift. Always. I stared at the mug for a long time, and for the first time, I felt fear. Not suspicion. Fear. Because deep down, some part of me already knew something terrible was coming. 3 weeks later, the storm hit. Literally. Freezing rain, power outages, half the city covered in ice. That night, Michael left for work anyway. Hospitals never close. Around 1:38 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something made me answer. Static. Then a woman's voice. "Hello?" "Yes?" Silence. Then, "I think you should know your husband isn't at the hospital." My entire body went cold. What? The line disconnected. I stared at my phone in complete silence, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I called Michael immediately. No answer. Again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. At first, I tried convincing myself it was a prank, but fear had entered the room, and once fear enters, it changes the air. At 2:13 a.m., I called the hospital. "Good evening, St. Vincent Medical Center?" "Hi," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can I connect you to respiratory therapy?" "Of course. One moment." Soft music. My hands shaking violently. Then another voice answered. "Respiratory department?" "Hi, can I speak to Michael Bennett?" Pause. Then, "I'm sorry, who?" "Michael Bennett, night shift respiratory therapist." Longer pause this time, then the sentence that destroyed my life. "Ma'am, no one by that name works here." I genuinely thought I misheard her. The storm outside was loud. Thunder shaking the windows, rain hammering against the glass. I gripped the phone tighter. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Can you check again?" Keyboard typing. Another pause. Then, "No Michael Bennett in respiratory therapy." My mouth went dry instantly. "There has to be a mistake. He's worked there for years." "Not at St. Vincent, ma'am." My legs actually gave out. I sat down hard on the kitchen floor while the woman on the line kept talking. "Would you like another department?" But I wasn't listening anymore, because suddenly, my entire marriage felt unstable. Not just tonight. Everything. I ended the call without another word. Then I sat there in silence, staring at nothing, while rainwater crawled down the apartment windows. Your brain does something strange during shock. It starts searching desperately for alternate explanations. Wrong hospital. Administrative issue. Maybe he transferred departments. Anything except the obvious truth. I called Michael again, straight to voicemail. Again, nothing. At 2:47 a.m., I realized something horrifying. I had no idea where my husband actually was. Not emotionally, physically. And when you marry someone, you assume you always know where they exist in the world. That assumption disappeared in one night. I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch until morning with the television on mute, waiting, thinking, trying not to panic. At 5:56 a.m., I heard keys outside the apartment door. Then Michael walked in. Wet hair, dark jacket, tired expression. Normal. Completely normal. "Rough night," he sighed. And I remember staring at him thinking, "Who are you?" He leaned down and kissed my forehead, cold rain on his skin. "You okay?" he asked. "You didn't answer your phone." Busy night. Then he disappeared into the bathroom, and suddenly I noticed something. No scrubs. He wasn't wearing hospital scrubs anymore. Jeans, dark sweater, boots. My stomach tightened instantly. When had that changed? How long had I stopped noticing? That realization terrified me more than the lie itself, because it meant deception had slowly normalized around me. Michael came back into the kitchen, toweling his hair. "You're pale." "I called the hospital tonight." Silence. Not dramatic silence. Worse. Stillness. Michael froze completely for maybe half a second, then continued drying his hair. "Why?" I got worried. "About what?" "There was a storm." He nodded slowly. "Makes sense." Too calm. Way too calm. I stared at him, then finally said it. "They told me you don't work there." For the first time in our marriage, I watched my husband become someone else. His entire face changed. Not panic, calculation. Tiny, quick, controlled. Then he laughed softly. "Oh my God!" "What?" I knew this would happen eventually. My heart started pounding harder. "What are you talking about?" "I transferred hospitals in November." I blinked. "What?" "St. Catherine's bought out part of our department. I thought I told you." No, he absolutely had not. But he said it so smoothly, so casually, like the misunderstanding was mine. "I never told you?" he asked, pretending confusion. And this is the part that still embarrasses me. For one horrible second, I doubted myself. That's what manipulators do. They make you question your own memory before you question their lies. "I never said that," I whispered. Michael sighed dramatically. "Claire, you've been stressed lately." That sentence hit me like ice water, because suddenly I understood something. He wasn't nervous. He was experienced. Experienced at lying to me. That morning, after he fell asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen replaying the conversation over and over. Transferred hospitals. Possible. Technically possible. But something felt wrong. Very wrong. So instead of going to work, I drove to St. Catherine's. The entire way there, I kept trying to calm myself down. "You're overreacting. You're tired. This is becoming unhealthy." But intuition kept pushing harder. The hospital sat on the edge of downtown. Large glass entrance. Gray winter sky reflected across the windows. I walked inside trying to look casual. The smell hit immediately. Sanitizer. Coffee. Hospital air. For a moment, I almost felt relief. See? He works here. You're spiraling. I approached the front desk. Hi, I'm curious. Can you tell me where respiratory therapy is? Third floor. Thanks. Elevator. Heartbeat pounding. Third floor. Nurses moving quickly through hallways, phones ringing, machines beeping softly somewhere nearby. Real hospital life. I spotted a middle-aged nurse checking charts near a station. Excuse me, I said quietly. Do you know Michael Bennett? She frowned politely. Sorry? Who? Respiratory therapist, night shift. Her expression stayed blank. No, sorry. Cold fear spread through my chest. Maybe he works another floor? Respiratory staff rotates a lot, but I don't recognize the name. I thanked her somehow, then walked into the nearest bathroom and locked myself inside a stall. My hands were trembling violently now, because deep down, I already knew. Michael had lied again. Not one lie. Layers. Carefully constructed layers. And I was standing inside them without understanding how deep they went. That afternoon, I did something I never imagined myself doing. I followed my husband. Again. Michael left for work at 9:15 p.m. exactly like always. Same kiss, same calm expression, same practiced routine. But this time, I waited downstairs in my car. 10 minutes later, his SUV pulled onto the highway. I followed at a distance through freezing rain and blurred headlights. My chest hurt from anxiety. Michael drove downtown, past both hospitals, past the medical district completely. Then finally, he turned into a narrow side street near the riverfront. Old brick buildings, bars, restaurants, converted warehouse apartments. Not hospitals. Michael parked outside a building with dim yellow lights glowing through the windows. Then he got out, and another woman opened the door before he even knocked, like she'd been waiting. Tall, dark hair, oversized sweater. She smiled the moment she saw him, and my husband smiled back like he belonged there. Then she kissed him. Not quickly, not guiltily, comfortably, like this had happened many times before. Something inside me collapsed so completely, I physically stopped breathing for a second. I sat frozen behind the steering wheel, while rainwater distorted everything outside the windshield. The woman touched his face gently. Michael laughed softly at something she said. Then they disappeared inside together. And just like that, my marriage ended. Not legally, emotionally. Because there's a moment in betrayal where denial finally dies. And once it dies, nothing ever looks the same again. I stayed parked outside that building for almost an hour. Not because I thought Michael would come back out, because I physically couldn't make myself drive. Rain slid slowly across the windshield while the heater hummed softly inside the car, and all I could think was, how long? How long had my husband been living another life? Weeks? Months? Years? People imagine discovering infidelity as explosive. Screaming, crying, drama. Real betrayal is quieter. It's shock. Your brain protecting itself by going numb before the pain arrives. I remember staring at the apartment windows, wondering which one belonged to them. Them. God. Even thinking that word made me sick. At some point, I finally drove home. The apartment felt unfamiliar when I walked inside. Same furniture, same framed photos, same blankets on the couch, but everything looked fake somehow, like a movie set pretending to be my marriage. I didn't sleep that night. At 5:48 a.m., Michael came home, right on schedule, like always. He walked into the bedroom quietly, probably assuming I was asleep. Then he leaned down and kissed my forehead. That almost destroyed me, because his lips had touched another woman hours earlier, and still he kissed me like habit, like routine, like performance. I kept my eyes closed until he fell asleep beside me. Then I stared at the ceiling until sunrise, and sometime around dawn, the sadness became anger. Cold anger, not emotional chaos, something calmer, more dangerous, because suddenly I didn't want explanations anymore. I wanted truth. All of it. Her name was Vanessa Cole. I learned that 3 days later. Michael forgot his smartwatch charging on the bathroom counter before leaving for work. Messages synced automatically, and once I saw the first notification, I looked at everything. I know some people will judge that. I don't care. Marriage without trust becomes investigation, and I was done being blind. Vanessa, 31 years old, interior designer, divorced. The messages went back nearly a year. A year. While I slept beside him, while we celebrated anniversaries, while we hosted Christmas dinner for my parents. There were photos, restaurants, weekend trips, selfies together, entire memories I never knew existed. Then I found the message that truly shattered me. Vanessa had written, "Are you ever going to tell her?" Michael replied, "Soon. I just need more time." 6 months earlier. 6 months. I sat there, holding the watch while something inside me hardened permanently. Because he wasn't confused. He wasn't trapped. He was comfortable. Comfortable letting me finance half his life while he built another one behind my back. That realization changes love into something unrecognizable. I confronted him 4 nights later. Not immediately. I needed clarity first. Evidence. Control. Because betrayal steals dignity first, and I refused to lose mine completely. Michael was making coffee before leaving for his fake shift. Calm, relaxed, humming softly. I walked into the kitchen holding printed screenshots. He looked up smiling, then saw my face, and everything changed instantly. "What's wrong?" I placed the papers on the counter. Vanessa's photos, messages, dates. Michael stared at them silently, then sat down slowly. No denial. That hurt worse somehow. Finally, he whispered, "How much do you know?" "Enough." Silence filled the kitchen. The coffee machine kept dripping behind him. Tiny sounds suddenly felt unbearably loud. Michael rubbed both hands over his face. Then came the sentence every cheater eventually says, "I never wanted to hurt you." I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because the human ability to lie to itself is unbelievable. You lied to me for almost a year. I know. You made me think you worked nights. I know. You let me worry about our marriage while you slept with someone else. Michael's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know how to leave. There it was. The truth. Cowardice. Not passion, not destiny. Cowardice. People think affairs are about love. Most of the time they're about selfishness and fear. Michael wanted comfort without consequences. Me at home, her downtown. 2 lives, 1 lie holding them together. "I was going to tell you," he whispered. "No," I said quietly. "You were going to keep lying until you got caught." That sentence broke him more than shouting would have, because it was true. The divorce process started 2 weeks later. And that's when I discovered the final betrayal. Money. Michael had been secretly transferring part of his paycheck into another account for months, preparing. Apartment deposits, furniture purchases, vacation bookings with Vanessa, all while splitting bills with me. My attorney called it financial deception. I called it cruelty. The legal process dragged for 7 months. Michael moved into Vanessa's apartment almost immediately. That hurt too, not because I wanted him back, but because it proved how long he'd emotionally left before physically leaving. Meanwhile, I stayed in our apartment alone, and silence became unbearable. Do you know what's strange after divorce? It's not the big moments that hurt most. It's tiny things. 1 toothbrush instead of 2. 1 coffee mug in the sink. No footsteps at night. Absence becomes physical. There were nights I genuinely thought grief might kill me. Not dramatic grief, heavy grief, the kind that sits on your chest at 3 a.m. Therapy helped eventually. So did time. Slowly. Painfully slowly. 6 months ago, I ran into Michael unexpectedly at a grocery store, frozen foods aisle of all places. He looked older, tired. Vanessa wasn't with him. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then he said, "You look good." I almost laughed because I had survived him. That's why I looked different. People underestimate what survival does to a person. Michael shifted awkwardly. "I'm sorry," he whispered finally, and for the first time, I believed him. Not because he changed, because consequences had finally reached him. Vanessa left 3 months after their relationship became public. Apparently, relationships built on lies don't create much trust. Funny how that works. "I loved you," Michael said quietly in the grocery store. I looked at him for a long moment, then answered honestly, "I think you loved being loved." And his face collapsed because he knew exactly what I meant. I live alone now. Smaller apartment, better neighborhood. I sleep with the television off again. I started painting recently. Terribly, but still. Every once in a while, I wake up around 2 a.m. and remember the woman on the phone saying, "He doesn't work here." Strange how one sentence can divide your life into before and after. But if someone listening to this is going through betrayal right now, I need you to hear this part carefully. Their deception is not your shame. Read that again. People who lie expertly are practiced at creating comfort while hiding truth. That doesn't make you stupid for trusting them. It makes them dangerous for abusing trust. I still believe in love. Maybe that sounds naive after everything, but I refuse to let one dishonest person turn me cynical forever. That would mean he stole even more from me, and I've already given him enough. My name is Claire Bennett, Denver, Colorado, and this is the story of the night my husband went to work somewhere he never actually worked at.